All right. So, welcome to Launchpad Industry Insight Sessions. And this week we are going to be looking at getting release ready. So, basically, we're going to talk about what it is to release some music. Now, I'm sure that some of you have all been through this, and some of you have might be a first time. Some of you have maybe done quite a lot of it, and have got some thoughts and just want to kind of look at your practice. But we're going to talk about kind of what that's going to cover. Before we do, let's talk about the things we're going to be covering. So this week, obviously, like I say, we're getting release ready. Next week will be promotion and marketing. 30th will be managing your royalties, everyone's favorite one. And then Monday the 7th will be live opportunities. And then the 14th, looking at funding opportunities, of which there's quite a lot, and you'll be surprised kind of what's out there. These are mainly going to be taken by myself, but they are. So let's move on. So just quickly about me, because, you know, everyone's favorite subject, right? That's obviously, I don't know why I put a picture of me. You can obviously see me. That's me in a different hat with some slightly different glasses. But if you want to kind of follow what I do, I'm Ed Heaton producer on Instagram. I'm rubbish posting on Instagram. So, you know, like it will be sporadic. I do many stories. Every now and again, I might do like a proper post. But I am there, and you can also find me on LinkedIn as well, where I'm again quite sporadic and active, mainly just because I'm old and I find social media terrifying. So what makes me qualified to teach this? I have what's called a portfolio career. So I am involved with loads of different stuff on a day-to-day basis. Primarily, I started as a producer and mix engineer, which I still do. In fact, I was mixing a record today, and that's my studio that I'm sat in right now. It looks more yellowy on that picture, much more inviting. I'm a artist and songwriter, so I write songs with and for other people, but I also release music as well as under a couple of three different names, primarily. So I'm involved in kind of the creation as well, and that, you know, that's still a big thing for me. I'm a sound designer and composer, so I particularly for theatre, I do a lot of work in theatre as a sound designer and composer. That picture is from a brilliant show called The Lighthouse, which toured earlier this year, which was beautiful. I'm currently involved with a couple of shows, in fact, 3 different shows at the moment as well. I do post-production and sound editing, so particularly at the moment, quite a lot on podcasts. I have my own podcast called Survival Songs. If you're interested in that, have a look for Survival Songs on all platforms, and there, a bit of promotion. But I also edit other podcasts. Right now, I'm the producer and editor for the England's official netball podcast. That's true, which I love very much, and I'm finding out a sport that I knew very little about, and now I know a lot more. It's brilliant, obviously female-led, which is fantastic. So get to do that. I'm a director of a publishing company called Four and North Publishing. We have about 500 song catalog, and we represent lots of independent artists, and we do quite well in sync. So we do stuff. So we've got stuff on Love Island. We've just done some stuff for Arlo. And we've got a few bits and pieces knocking around. I'm not allowed to talk about because we've signed NDAs. But yeah, we've done quite a bit of stuff. We're still pretty new, and we do kind of run songwriting camp with Four. Come Play With Me earlier this summer, which was a female and non-binary songwriting camp for female non-binary songwriters, which was brilliant. We did that at Elcom, and yeah, it was a lovely thing. And so we're sort of trying to be much more active within the community where possible. And I also lecture at Leeds Beckett. I basically sort of about 1 day a week. I lecture in music industry because it's kind of what I do and it's what I'm involved in. But I've also managed bands. I've run labels. I've run commercial studios. You know, I've been in the business for about 25 years. So I've done quite a lot in my time. But I still love it, and I'm really uncynical about it. Yeah, and I hope that kind of comes across in what I'm doing. So I apologize if sometimes I sound glib or but one of the things I do love is I love my job and I love being part of this. So hopefully you'll enjoy hearing from me. So I'm just getting so obviously like I just want to sort of, and this came from years ago, and I always put this, and I say this every time, is that basically I love music, and that's really obvious. Uh, uh, I have had to learn the business of music. So I realized, so basically, my first ever lecture that I gave was at Leeds Conservatoire. It was Leeds College of Music then. And this was sort of back in like 2004. And I just set up a recording studio, and I was asked to kind of talk about that as a process. And I got some feedback from a friend of a friend, and that feedback was, oh, he's a bit corporate. I was so angry because I was like, what do you mean a bit corporate? Like, what? I set up a recording studio. Like, that's a business. Like, I think I can't just go, hey, man, let's set up a recording studio. That'll be like loads of fun. It's like thousands of pounds worth of equipment and like building. We like did full building works. It was a massive undertaking. And so therefore, I can't just kind of go, and actually, this part of it is the music business. And like I've learned it so I can keep creating. So, like I get to do this every day as a living, and I get to have a brilliant, really rich freelance career because I've learned the business of music. I've learned what copyright does. I've learned the mechanics of it. And that has allowed me to just keep making and keep being part of this brilliant thing. So yeah, so if I ever sound like I'm corporate, it sound like a business, know that at the heart of it is that I love music. And basically I do this so I don't have to get a proper job, because no one wants to get a proper job, particularly if you're a musician and working this. Can you all still see the slides, by the way? Could someone just give a thumbs up or something?
Yeah, I can still see.
Excellent stuff. I'm going to move to this view so I can see the chat and use the thing. So I might zoom in just a little bit into this. There you go. I know it's not ideal, but I think this is a nicer view. And it means I can see more of you guys and what you want to say. And so please feel free to ask any questions. If I'm going to come to it, I will say, I'll get to that, and you will, and we will. If I forget to get to it, remind me. So we've got the chat just there. So please feel free to use that. And thank you for everyone who's sort of filling that. Yep. Excellent. All right, so let's move on. So, all right, so just to kind of get started, and I think it's really important. There's no magic wand, okay? Like these courses are brilliant, and God, I wish we'd had these when I was younger. But I really want to be clear that like no one can, like, there's no magic answer. What we hope to do is give you ideas and thoughts and best practice and stuff that you might not have thought of, to help you move forward in your career. And some of this you might have heard before, and you might be going, oh, is that thing again? But if you're hearing it again, it's probably because it's perceived wisdom and it's best practice. But I just really want to make it clear that there isn't like a kind of like da-da, and everyone, and you're like, and someone unlocks everything for you, and you walk through a magic door into a world of riches and fame. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I just want to really make that really clear that these are thoughts and they're ideas, and hopefully it will inspire you and make you think of things and look at things and make you things different. But it won't necessarily, like, there is. I wish there was a key that I could just hand everyone and go, here you go, here's your music career. Just is if we did, then we'd all be doing it. Okay, I hope that is cool with everyone. All right. So first of all, let's look. Actually, these are the things we're going to look at. I managed to get those the wrong way around. So these are the things we're going to look at today. So we're going to be looking at planning and goals. We're going to be looking at getting your assets ready. We're going to be looking at distributors and DSPs, promoting your release, direct to fan, and royalties. Okay. Hopefully they're pretty self-explanatory. Planning goals, obviously, just actually why are you doing things, and like what is the time frame you're doing them, getting your assets ready, the stuff that you need to release a record, because you need some stuff. Distributors and DSPs, distributors are the things that get you to market. So like they are the service providers that will get your music on the DSPs. And if you're thinking, what on earth are DSPs? Don't worry. So DSP stands for digital service providers. It's a term we use as a catch-all for Spotify, Apple Music, not Ditto, other ones, Amazon Music, and now obviously can't think of any of them. But all basically any way you can stream music, they are what we call DSPs, digital service providers. Yeah, so the reason why we call them that and the reason why we refer to them that is that so we're not referring just to Spotify or just at, Apple Music. We appreciate that their list different services are used differently in different territories. So like France, for example, the biggest service there is Deezer. So we need to refer to them collectively. So when we're referring to DSPs, talking about Spotify and talking about the Apple Music, I am now laboring the point. Promoting your music, your release, so kind of good practice you can do when your music's released, like things that you can be thinking of doing to make sure that you're kind of telling people about it and hopefully maximizing on the reasons why you're doing it. Direct to fan, so like how are you telling people, how are you getting that directly to your audience, how can you also monetize that, and again and then royalties, and this will just be a very quick overview of royalties, like super quick, because we're going to look at that later on as well. So there are things that we kind of like, there'll be introductions to, and then the stuff that we're going to hopefully kind of dig deeper in. As I say, if you've got any questions, do put it in the chat and I'll come back to it. All right, let's keep on moving, as Soul Soul said in 1989. Okay, so planning and goals. So these are the questions you should be asking yourself when you're going to release a record. All right, and these are the kind of like stuff that really want you to think about. So first of all, don't rush your release. Now, what happens is that there's lots of bleeping and pinging going on, by the way. It's very distracting. So sorry, I sometimes get distracted by noise. So consider why you're releasing it. Why do you need to release this song now? So you might have finished your brilliant new song. You're really, really proud of it. You think it's the best thing you've ever written, and you're so keen to get it out. Now that's really great, and it's fantastic. You should feel that about your own music. That's really important that you believe in your own music and you really want to get it out there. But that you need to consider, why is it that song? Is it the best time to do it? Like, for example, is it December? Is it a good time? Because December is not a great time to release new music because it's Christmas and everybody's listening to Mariah Carey. It's summer and everyone's away at festivals and no one's necessarily kind of in discovery mode because everyone's gone to watch Coldplay for the 3 millionth time on the main stage. So yeah, be mindful of why and when and how you're releasing that music. If people haven't heard from you in a while, you're nervous about that and you're kind of like, you really want to rush release. But the problem is that sometimes that urge can mean that you just rush things through. And it's really important that when you release music, it's done in a considered and planned manner. Now, that is like the least rock and roll phrase of all time, right? But this is the bit where we kind of have to kick in more and start thinking more about kind of how the process of it, because it is a process. It's and it gets easier if you develop a process, if that makes sense. Ben, I'll get to you in terms of timelines. That's a really good question. And does that change depending on genre? That's a really good question. I will come back to that. If I don't, give me a nudge. But I'm going to talk about timelines in a minute or two. So before you move forward with the release, things to consider. Is the song a single, and can it achieve what I want it to? Now, the reason why I ask is it a single is because singles are have a pretty clear format, which is essentially song tends to be about between 3 and 4 minutes. 4 is pretty much your maximum now. I know everyone will go, what about Bohemian Rhapsody? Yeah, it's Bohemian Rhapsody. It's the exception that proves the rule, you know. But is it actually a single? Is it radio friendly, or is it, or and when I say radio friendly, the kind of radio that you might listen to like, I don't know, like hardcore. So is it a hardcore single? Is it ready to go to those radio stations and be listened to by those radio stations? Will it sit well on playlists? Because sometimes song and certain songs will sit on certain playlists, right? So it might fit better within an EP. So like a collection of songs, it might be a really good B-side. Now that doesn't mean that you can't still promote it to playlists. But it's about what are you wanting to achieve with it. Okay, what am I wanting to do? Have you got something to follow it up? What comes next? Now, because particularly, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, is that the DSPs tend to respond. They like regular releases. Daniel Ek, who is the pantomime villain of the music industry nowadays, said, and he was kind of vilified for it. And I don't know. I think all he was doing is going, listen, I run a company that has a platform. This is what I found out, which is essentially people respond well to music being released regularly. They want little and often, not big and not very often. Okay. Now, obviously, people are very upset by that and saying, how dare he tell us how we should release our music and when we should release our music? It's an art form, you money grabbing so-and-so. That I don't know. I feel like what he was basically saying is, this is what I found out. This is what audiences want. Now, again, you'll go, well, Taylor Swift releases an album every year. Yes, she does. But she releases an album every year on the dot, that's very full, that's very packed, and has a lot of singles to it. So, and she's she's a kind of like once in a generation artist. So it's very difficult to kind of compare. Gabby asks a really good question out of curiosity. What would be classified as a single? I tell you what I'm going to do is that please keep asking these questions and I'll come back to them at the end. We're basically going to do a question answer at the end. So if you guys put all these questions in as you're thinking of them, and I will try and get through them at the end. Is that okay? Because we tried to make this as kind of like quite short and concise, and then kind of leave plenty of room for questions. Excellent. Thanks, guys. So I'm not going to ignore your questions. It's just that I'm going to answer them at the end. I think that will then mean that we're not kind of getting interrupted and this will flow better. Okay. So where was I? So have you got time to promote it properly? So promoting a record takes a lot of effort, because you're probably going to have to be quite active on social media. You're probably going to have to create quite a bit of content. You're going to have to be sending it off to kind of different outlets. So you might be sending it to radio, you might send it to blogs, influencers, or you might be getting in touch with podcasts or podcasters who talk about new music. So kind of that all takes time and effort, and that is going to take some time. So it's about whether or not you have the time to do that, because it's a really hard job, and it can be pretty relentless once you get into that cycle. And are you able to promote the release with live dates? Now, that isn't applicable to everybody. Now, that might be that you're more like a dance based producer, or you're much more kind of like program based, which I am, and I don't play live. I DJ a little bit, but like I certainly don't perform live, because I think I'd be rubbish. But if you're a band, it's like, or you're a solo artist or whatever, or you have the ability to play live, are you able to promote the single with live performances? Because again, that adds to the story. It adds to the dimensions of what you're doing. It makes gives more stuff for you to talk about, and add more momentum to the release. Okay, so these are really just important things to consider, like before so why are you doing it? Have you got the time? can you follow it up? Like what happens if the track does really well? It gains some traction. You're doing really well. You suddenly got a bit of momentum. Momentum's really hard. Like it's the thing that I think artists struggle with. What's one of the things that I struggle with the most is that feeling that there's no momentum in your music. So suddenly when it starts feeling like you want to be able to capitalize on that momentum, you want to back that up, and you want to have something ready to go, which means that essentially that there's some planning. And again, this can be really difficult for artists because it means that you've got to kind of shift time. You've got to make time to plan, and then you have to and create, and then you've got to make time to execute those things. So time management is a really big deal in planning a release. So what are you wanting to achieve? So looking at this question, what are you wanting to achieve this release? Is it, it could be press coverage, it could be radio play, it could be sales and streams, it could be building a fan base, it could be industry interest, or it could be to get more gigs and live appearances. So you got to think about, what do you need to do to make those work? Now, it might be a combination of those things. And arguably someone will go, well, I want all of those things. That's a lot. That's a lot of things that, to say I want to achieve every single one of those. That's a lot. So building a fan base means that you might be more forward facing. So you're more focused about letting an audience know and building awareness through things like social media. And it might be, and also, make in combination with radio play, press coverage, and getting on things like podcasts, which I think are a growing format and something that I don't think gets talked about enough in music promotion. I think there is a growth area here that podcasts are huge, and I think it's still an untapped thing with music. And it could be a thing that someone starts and goes, I'm going to do a new music podcast. That there's room for that. Industry interest is really interesting because I think ultimately when you're first releasing, what you're trying to do is get the industry on side. What you want to do is make the industry interested in you. And you do that by getting radio play, getting write-ups, just creating a little buzz about it, so stuff that isn't necessarily that much to do with an audience. Unfortunately, industry are looking at numbers. They are very data-led and they are looking at things. But if you're also getting a bit of a buzz and you're creating a bit of noise, maybe you've done a video that's done really well on TikTok, whatever that might be. It's about what is that focus? What are you wanting that single to do? And so I think for example, an act like Venus Girls did really well at almost getting the industry interested by press and by radio, and by creating a narrative and story around them, that then so radio kind of came aboard, and then press were on board, and it was kind of a really, really well constructed kind of development in what they did. So they used PR a lot. They worked with a really good PR company to kind of like build some noise and get industry on board. So they started getting plays on Radio 1. And getting that kind of, which then at least industry leads to, well, showcases actually, but also live appearances, so festival bookings, the kind of introducing way through. So it's about industry is it's an interesting one because it can mean a myriad of things. So, getting a booking agent, I would argue, is like industry interest. I hope that makes sense. So it's about where is your focus going to be? Because I think trying to achieve all of these things is really difficult. Sales and streams might be, you're going to just go hard on playlists, which are great. Playlists are brilliant, but they're quite, we know that playlists are quite passive in terms of who listens to them, which is what we call lean back or lean forward listening. So you might get loads of streams, but that doesn't necessarily always translate into like having a new fan base. It just means you've got a lot of people listening to your music. Again, that looks great for the industry. Likes that. They like a lot of streams, right? So you might want to do a follow-up that then kind of focuses on the industry and go, hey, look, we got 100,000 streams in our first week on our last single, and we got these playlists. isn't that interesting. Do you see what I mean? There's an interplay, and actually this comes across in maybe some releases, not just one release. So I think that's a point, is that ultimately it's about a collection of releases rather than just kind of going, we're going to do one and hope and put all our hopes on one release. It should be a strategy about what each of those releases are going to be. I hope that makes sense. So have as much ready as possible. So in your planning and timescales. I hope this answers the early question. So 6 weeks tends to be the kind of the rule of thumb with stuff, which is interesting because there was a little point when kind of time stopped. Time stopped working. Time sort of stopped working the way it used to. Sorry, I was trying to read comments. Then I should stop that. And people just started throwing stuff out fairly willy-nilly because it was just like, oh well, it doesn't matter because the internet means that you don't have to release things 4 to 6 weeks in advance. What happened is the industry became very overwhelmed very quickly, and it realized, including, and so services like Spotify realized they needed a process to kind of like go through all the releases that were being put on offer to them. So there's about 100,000 tracks released every day on Spotify at the moment. So DSPs want about, so it says it takes a week there. It takes a week to get delivered to DSP. But the truth is, if you want to pitch your music to DSP, so if you want to pitch your music to so for example, Spotify playlists, you need to make sure that you're getting in around 4 to 6 weeks, because anything under that, they're not going to consider it. So you get your music out to press. So sorry, what I'm trying to say is look at your release date, plan a release date, and then work backwards. So 4 to 6 weeks is when you should be starting to contact press. It's when you start sending stuff out to the DSPs, pitching for playlists via their services. People want plenty of time to kind of mull over, and also what that allows you as someone is to follow up. So if you're like pitching out to influencers in whatever format that might be, and you haven't heard anything back, it means you can kind of go back to them and start pushing them and nudging them. I got in contact with you. Persistence is really important. So sometimes you have to be a bit of a pain sometimes. It's not as prevalent now, but when you were able to contact Spotify curators when they were human, then sorry, could I ask everyone to make sure that their mics are off? That'd be brilliant. When you contact curators, you'd have to be persistent with them. I was contacting curators every other day, so I was being that annoying. So and people say, well, I'm worried about being annoying. If you're being annoying, they will just ignore you, or eventually they'll tell you to do one particular playlist did actually tell me to go away and leave them alone and never contact them again. But I'll be honest, I also got stuff. So, like, for example, we got a lot of stuff. I got a lot of stuff on Singapore, had their own like playlist of stuff that they had that I felt really fitted for the artists that were releasing. So I absolutely hammered this guy, like honestly, like every other day I emailed him going, just to remind you about this. And finally we got on there, and we got like 10 to 15,000 streams from that playlist, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for an artist, that's a really big deal. It was also an official Spotify register, so which means that it's better because Spotify likes its own playlists. Does that make sense? So making sure that you're so making sure that you're doing things in plenty of time. So a week, 2 weeks, you're just leaving it far too late. So that 4 to 6 weeks is really important. Okay. I've lost my place. There we go. So, so confirm your release date, as I've mentioned. Make sure that you know when that is. Make sure it's a Friday. Fridays are the globally recognized day for releasing new music. It used to be Monday, but everything shifted, particularly when we moved over to streaming. It's now Friday. So Fridays are your release day. DSPs prefer it. It can be easy to pick up press on the other sides of those days. So what that means is, like, you might want to give a website or online zine an exclusive of your work. And actually, what you don't want to do is take up release dates time. If you're releasing a record on the Friday, what you want to be able to do is go, it's out, everyone, it's out on Friday. The day before, if you've got an exclusive, you can go, you want to hear our new single early to your fans, then head over to this this website, and you can hear this exclusive right now, and that just allows more time and detail. So make sure that you've got that. So that kind of stuff, those exclusive plays and things like that, are good to kind of have around the Friday. But the Friday is the day you want to release, because that's when the DSPs prefer it. It's just recognized. It's when people are looking out for it, and people are focused on Fridays. There used to be a lot of talk about other days, and you can still release on Thursdays and all that stuff, but ultimately the way the industry has kind of, it is very much coalesced around that. So getting your assets ready. So before committing to a release and uploading, try to have them these assets kind of in place and ready to go. And these are the kind of key things that you should do. So a mastered recording. So hopefully you all understand what I mean by mastered recording. So essentially that is a file format mastered. It'll be WAV, so a .wav file. It'll be 24-bit, around either 44.1 or 48 kilohertz. Mastered means it is basically at a level that is kind of standard. Now, this is very much, there's a lot of argument around this, believe me. Recently, the kind of rule is that 14 LUFS, that is a thing. 14 LUFS, don't ask me what it stands for. 14 LUFS is the kind of standard volume that you should be going for. 14 LUFS is the kind of, that's what Spotify broadcasts at. So you might want to kind of be knocking around 9 LUFS, just so you're a little bit louder. Anything more than that, you're probably going to start like, it's going to, so basically at 14 LUFS, everything gets knocked down. So yeah, that's kind of what to aim for. But a good mastering engineer or even sound engineer that you're working with on your music should already know this, and they will be kind of mastering your music as such. So making sure you've got a really good quality, properly mastered recording. You've got a pack shot or artwork. So you've got a piece of artwork that's ready to go. Make sure it's not copyright infringement, that you're not just using a photo of something that's someone's going to come along and ask you to take it down. Is make sure it's an original piece of work. You've got new promo photos. So like you've got stuff to kind of chuck around that to go with a press release. So you'll have a press release that you want to send out to press, obviously, but to radio, to blogs, to podcasters, to whoever it might be that you want people to talk about your music. Even playlisters want to hear that stuff. They want to hear the bios. They want to know the story. So making sure you've got that ready, a well-written playlist. If you struggle with that stuff, and people are going to probably start throwing eggs at the screen, but do use like something like ChatGPT to help structure sentences. I'm dyslexic. So I really struggle, and one of my big struggles is sentence structure. I really struggle with structuring sentences when I'm writing. So I found ChatGPT really brilliant for that kind of stuff. When I know what I want to say, piecing it out into a good sounding format is the bit where I struggle in. So don't be afraid to use those tools. They're really good. They're really useful. You can, and they'll save you time. There are some websites that will literally just copy and paste your work. They won't add any new journalism. They will take what you've written, put it on the website, and that will be their coverage. Get used to it. It happens. And so those shots will go with, and you'll probably want a folder that's accessible to those people. So if you're emailing people, you want to send them a link to that folder. People hate having attachments. Don't send people loads of attachments. They get really annoyed by it. It really frustrates them, and things get lost. Make sure there's a folder that basically points everything that, and within your press release, make sure you've got links to all the assets, to the assets folder, and also something like a SoundCloud link or a Disco link if you have Disco, so people can listen to it, stream it online before it, if they don't want to download it, or so they can just access it straight away. Make things easy for those people. Really important. Agreed songwriting split. So you might have written the song with someone else, and make sure that you know who owns what. That's really important. As someone who works in publishing, like, I will not touch a song if I don't know who's written it. Right? It just, like, I want to know the details of every single writer. I want to know the splits. I want to know who owns what. So songwriting split is basically who owns what of what. So, like, if you've written a song with 3 other people, is it that one person's got 50% and the other 2 people share 25% each? Is it, it's a 33.33 split between you all? Whatever it is, make sure you've got that written down, because the famous saying, and you'll hear me say this quite a lot: everyone's bros until the money shows. And it's true. I've seen bands fall out. I've seen people fall out about songwriting splits, and it can become quite divisive. So make sure you get that stuff done early. Make sure you have an instrumental recording. You never know that instrumental recordings are used in sync, so synchronization. So when music gets put on adverts or on TV, they might want to use a version of your music without any lyrics on it. So, for example, when our music gets used on Love Island, they tend to do segues between the vocal version and the instrumental version. So they will move between the two. So it's really worth having an instrumental version. And then, beautifully misspelt by me, make sure that you're registered with PRS and PPL. Now, we're going to go into this stuff a little bit more, a bit further down the line, but ultimately PRS, if you register with PRS, it means you're registering the song, not the recording, the song, the composition, with basically who wrote it. Now, you need to register that, so it means that you can get some money from the DSPs when it's played. And PPL is performance rights for the master. So whoever's recorded, whoever owns the master and whoever performs on it and are registered as performers, they can get some royalties if it's played on radio or on television and things like that. So again, really important. Just say you won't get on the BBC or on ITV or on pretty much any broadcast channel in this country without being registered with PPL and PRS. It's really worth doing. Please do it. This will get repeated ad nauseum throughout this next few weeks. I will be boring about it, so I apologize now. So just to kind of give you a little kind of like show of what something. This is a track we put out a while ago called Body Home by Oakley Riot. These are some of the press shots we used. So hopefully what you do is you get an idea of who Oakley Riot is. So there's a little bio there about Oakley Riot. There's a link to Instagram, to TikTok, and then to a SoundCloud link. So basically everything you need is right there. And that was all sent out as a link within an email we were sending out to press and radio and different outlets. So they were fresh shots that Oakley Riot had done, and hopefully what it does give you a flavor. It's kind of spooky. It's a bit dark. It's a bit kind of twisted pop sort of stuff. So it hopefully gives you an idea of the mood we were going for with that track. So yeah, and that means that if they're using a visual medium, or indeed they're writing a piece about any kind of website or on a zine or anything like that, they can use one of those press shots as part of what they're doing. The internet, remember, is a visual medium, so make sure that you're working towards that. You're using the visual medium to help you, to help you. Yeah. Any questions so far? I think there's been quite a few. I might go through some of these now, actually, before we go on to the next section, so we're not just running through. Is that a good idea? Everyone happy with that? So I'm going to answer some of these questions now at the end of this sort of little bit before we get onto DSPs and distribution. Is that cool? So it feels like I'm answering relevant questions. Excellent. Good stuff. All right, I'm just going to thank you about the comments about young. So when is the best time of the year for people to discover new music, and does it change depending on genre? I don't know specifically about genre. People are really open, tend to be pretty open around end of January, February. Like that's a really good time. Like January, February is a really, because everyone's spent December listening to Christmas music. You know, they've filled themselves up with listening to the Pogues and Kirsty McCall quite rarely because it's amazing. And, you know, all the classics. And then they're like, right, new year, new music. So people tend to be quite open around then. I tend to find springtime's really nice because people are kind of like, you know, that people are ready. Now is a good time. Sort of, it feels like always, you know, September, because of kind of the school and university system, we tend to be sort of working the kind of September cycle. So people see this as a new start. So this always feels like a good time as well. Bad times, like I say, summer's pretty rubbish. Like July, August, because everyone's away and sort of on holiday and stuff like that, and spending money and already kind of they've got their thoughts elsewhere. Christmas for reasons that I've already mentioned. Yes, this PowerPoint will be available online. I don't know, or certainly this video will be anyway. So yeah, out of curiosity, what would classify a song as a single versus B-side? Are there any specific parameters to base this on, or is it subjective? I would argue it's fairly subjective. I think, you know, what people might think is a really good single, some people won't. It tends to be length based. So, and that's historical. So essentially we tend to think of singles around about 3 to 4 minutes. That's our sort of standard. And that's because the 7-inch format was made for that. And also they didn't want songs too long in jukeboxes because they wanted people to play as many as possible. So that's kind of technology kind of dictated what a kind of classic single length was. And that's sort of now been worked into kind of the way of doing it. My average song length is 7 minutes or longer. Great. And you know, I don't want to say that there's no point then, you know, because there will be an audience for that stuff. It won't be a mainstream audience. So if you're going for a kind of a pop market, if you're I'm going for like, you know, New Music Friday or Radio One, you know, all that kind of like, all the kind of like really the big stuff, then probably isn't. But there's probably a niche out there, right? So find the niche. Who is listening to that music? Where is that listened to? And target those people, because you probably find them more responsive than kind of the typical places. So yeah, that's about doing some research about where is, you know, long form music been listened to. But yeah, I suppose when I'm talking about single, I am talking about your classic pop single, I suppose. And what I mean by pop, I mean everything from indie to rock to kind of soul to funk to hip hop. They tend to be, you know, 3 to 4 minutes long. They tend to be, you know, have a thing that grabs people, a hook, a thing that people like love and digest. Is this referring to Venus Girls as something that you can do? Something that you can do with little or no budget for things such as PR and marketing? Is it good enough to simply be making good music, or do you need to be financially backing some financial backing behind you to actually get a foot in the door? It's a really good question, Matt. So Matt basically is asking about the kind of like so no, it isn't good. Like just making good music isn't enough. And I'm really honest. Like, I think you need to be telling people about the music. And what I mean by that is, isn't like, if you're just sat in your room making music and you don't, you know, you're kind of waiting to be discovered, you're never going to be discovered. You do need to be getting yourself out there. And that might be by playing loads of gigs. It might be playing social, you know, doing the social media thing. It might be doing live streams. It might be trying to get radio sessions, whatever it might be, however you want, you can reach people. You need to be out there doing that, because if you're not going to back yourself, no one else will. And in terms of financially, it there are ways and means of doing things cheaply. I always argue that if you're going to invest in something, like it's your career, it's about how much you want to invest, right? Um, so that is a personal decision, but I would always I want to make really good music, so I've invested in some really nice gear because I want to make as good a music as possible, right? So and so I suppose it's a similar thing. If I want to be able to my music to reach more people and do more things, therefore am I willing to invest in that? Now that's also comes with a lot of presumptions, and there is a lot of, and the issue with that is about availability of money, about availability to equip, so many different things, and a lot of privilege involved in that. And I really acknowledge that, by the way. It's okay for me to sit and go, well, just put some money behind your music. You might not have any money, and that is where inequality lies, without getting too into kind of the politics and the problems behind music and creating music and the music industry. Ultimately it's problematic. But yeah, I mean, there's a site. There's an artist signed to Darkroom Interscope, who we've done songwriting with, called Precious Propeller, and Precious is from Doncaster, and she was on TikTok singing songs, and she was discovered that way. And just because she was bloody brilliant, she's got a gorgeous voice, and the A&R guy from Darkroom just thought she was amazing, and just basically just was like, I think you're amazing, and has been handed a deal, and that can happen too, but it is about making yourself available and putting yourself out. I hope that answers the question. If making good music, the industry would be very different. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one, and I think that's again, what is good music is very subjective. What do you mean by playlists? Oh, that's a really good point. I'm sorry, I just sort of assuming that everyone knows. So playlists. I'm sorry. So playlists. I mean, so on Spotify or on Apple Music, you can create playlists, put songs in them, and like mixtapes, and you can make your own playlists, but there are also curated playlists. So playlists that are put together by Spotify or Apple Music, and these are done either by curators, so by human beings, or algorithmically, as in they're put together by they look at your tastes in music and go, well, they seem to be into Afrobeat, so we're going to make a playlist of Afrobeat and say, we think you'll like this, and they'll say you should listen to this. So there's a lot of things, and also mood playlists are kind of done. A lot of those are done now by algorithms. So yeah, I hope that answers the questions. But they are a massive, they're a huge source of income for a lot of artists. And so, as much as you can criticize passive listening, they can be a massive source of income for a lot of artists. People just putting on playlists, putting on music in the background that generates income. And if a lot of people are doing that with a lot of different playlists, it can become it's a really powerful thing. At what point would you would you set a release date in stone? Is it just the mastered and the cover art you need to have in place? Hopefully I've answered that. No, it isn't. It's all the other things we've said. It's basically when basically you've got everything, all those assets that we talked about ready. Okay. How does syncing work? Okay, so are there cases where your song gets found, or is it typical putting your own song up for sync? Typically, it's about making your song available for sync, and you can do that through lots of different ways. So so you can have a publisher that represents your music and kind of like make kind of looks after your income and how that works, and we'll talk about that in later weeks. Or there's also services where you can put your music on a website and hope that someone finds it and uses it, which is kind of which is great. You know, so some of the art lists, for example, you might put your music on art list, and that makes companies can use your music and you get some money for it. But we will talk about it more. So you decided to release a song in mid-October. This is Matt. However, we're in the mixing mastering phase currently. It should be done by the start of October. However, with 4 to 6 weeks as a guideline, is it worth releasing in November to promote to playlists, radio? Is it considered within the Bublé Mariah Carey Christmas period? I think November's all right. I think usually the last week in November is pretty much that's it. That's your kind of dead zone. And really, you want to be releasing mid-November at the latest, really, to get any traction. Because by the time you're in the last week of November, you're into full Christmas mode. I hope this is all helping, by the way, everyone. And thank you so much for all the questions. I'm glad I didn't wait to the end. I think we would have been here all night. For an artist for the first time releasing music, do you think it is worth investing in distributors like DistroKid, etc.? And what distributors would you recommend? Thank you so much for that question, Flo, because that is what's called in television as a segue. Let me put that in. So I will answer that question for you now. Distributors and DSPs. Look at that. It's like we planned it, Flo. Thank you. So to get your music onto the likes of Apple Music and Spotify, you need to use a distributor. So sorry, I'm just having to plug in my computer. Are you all still there? I hope you are. Yes, you just moved it to a different screen. Okay. Sorry, everyone, just 2 ticks. They've changed. I love it when. Can you all still see my thing? I'm gonna stop sharing. Can you all still see my?
Yeah, I can still see the screen.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Whoever said that, you're very helpful. 10 points to you. All right. So distributors and DSPs. So major labels. So there's 3 major labels in case people don't know. There's SME, so Sony Music Entertainment, Universal Music Group, and Warner's Music Group. Okay. They are what we call the majors. They are huge labels that own lots of smaller labels, what are called subsidiaries, without getting too much into the mechanics of the music industry. Because they're so big, they have direct deals with DSPs. So they don't need to go through other providers to distribute their music, because they have their own platforms, which they can just put their music on, and it'll go directly to all the DSPs and get sent out to everyone. Okay. Independent artists and most independent labels have to use what's called a digital distributor to get their music on DSPs. These are sometimes called aggregators. I don't know if people have heard about kind of aggregators and what that meant and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, they were sort of quite important at one point. Oh, that's where it is. So essentially, there's 2 forms of aggregators. I think you ask a really good question, Flo, about different notes. There's basically 2 models that, and I'm using this really broadly, by the way. And there's lots. As always, there's always more nuance than what I'm just explaining. So essentially, there is firstly, one of the first models, and one of the ones you'll probably use first is actually won't use first. I should probably done it the other way around. So firstly, there's the no upfront fee model. So essentially, you don't have to pay anything to go to use these distributors. So people like services like AWOL, Artists Without a Label. Does anyone know who AWOL are owned by? Artists Without a Label. Anyone want to take a swing?
No.
No. They're owned by Sony. So AWOL, Artists Without a Label, is owned by Sony, a very big label, which I just think is funny. I think there's a lot of irony. Mega lols. The Orchard, which is also owned by Sony, Platoon, which is owned by Apple, Kicker, who are independent distributor and based here in Leeds and work a lot with Launchpad, Believe, who are kind of quite a big, one of the big independent labels, but they also have a distribution arm. And there's lots of others as well. They don't take any upfront fees, but they will take about 15 to 20% of any royalties owned. They'll provide other services like pre-save, pre-order, playlist pitching, and things like that. So they will offer quite a lot of service for their 25, 15 to 20%. It might be more, it might be less, depending on who you are. It might be 30 if they're a big company and you're a small fish. It depends what you bring to the table. They'll also offer a lot of what's called back-end data. So like so rather than you having to go onto the different kind of like Spotify for Artists and Apple and all that stuff, you will get kind of a kind of an overview about who's listening to your music, where they're listening to it, what platforms are they using, how old they are, their gender, their their age group, demographic, all that kind of stuff. So what we call big data. The premise of that, and the reason why they don't charge you, is that their argument is that if you earn, they earn. So they have what I would call skin in the game. Does that make sense? They're like they want you to do well because they want you to do well because if they do, you do well, they do well. So it's sort of like a partnership as such. And depending on your relationship with them, that can be true or not. A lot of these services will vet who they distribute. So they won't just allow anyone to rock up with any music and just go, put this out for me. They will listen to it. They will look at maybe how many followers you've got, whether or not you've built an audience previously on DSPs, whether or not there's much of a buzz, whether or not it's worthwhile them investing in you before they agree to distribute your music. So in a way, the power kind of weirdly lies with them because they have to agree to do it. What you're hoping for is when they open the door for you is that then they get on board and help promote you. That can not always be the case, and that can sometimes be the case. It depends on the company and who it is, and who you're working with, and whether or not you've got a relationship with people. So essentially, that's the main premise. Now, these are more likely sort of DSPs that distributors that you might end up working with further down the line, maybe sort of 4th, 5th, 6th, maybe 12th release, before they might think about working with you, because they want to know that if they're gonna put any time and effort into you, that's going to be worth their while. Then there is the next is the upfront fee. So kind of basically you pay for the service. So you will keep 100% of your royalties. So they will give you, so whatever you earn, they'll give you back, but you will pay a subscription fee for them distributing your music. So these distributors will upsell other services such as pre-save, pre-order, playlist pitching. So all that stuff that's included with the others, they'll upsell that for you. Go, okay, we'll do this stuff, but you might you can pay an extra few quid to do that. These are arguably cheaper in the long run, but also have no vested long-term interest in your success. They're providing a service. You're paying them to put your music on Spotify or on Apple Music or on Deezer, and in return they collect your royalties and give them to you. And then if you want some extra stuff, you can pay them extra and they'll pitch it to playlists and all that kind of stuff. They have no vetting process, most of these, so pretty much anyone can release music on them, which is an arguably why we've seen such a massive upsurge in the amount of music that's getting released. Yeah, so within reason. So if you poll it with like 30 minutes worth of silence, they're not going to put that on. Obviously that has been done, but they've clamped down on that kind of stuff. They're not going to release stuff that's already copyrighted, so if you're just trying to put an ABBA record on there, they're probably not going to release that. But anything that's new and that's yours and that you have ownership over, they will put out for you. This model is based on the amount of people using their service. So they profit from just the sheer amount of people using it. So, that's why they're keen to get you to sign to things like subscription fees. So they know how much they're going to earn. So they go, well, we've got, 250,000 subscribers to our service. So we know we're going to make this amount of money. Does that make sense? So I hope that makes sense. There's an argument about which is best. Well, it depends where you are in your career and what you want from your release. So who will you work with when you release your music? So research the best distributor that you think works for you. Is there a way you can speak to them? So for example, Kicker is run by a lovely guy called Frank, who is always available. He's not always available, but he's very available. Really lovely guy, and you can talk to him. But he, in return, he's going to take 25% of what you earn. So if you're earning a very small amount of money, 25% of that is going to go in Kicker's pocket. That's no criticism. That's their business model, and I totally understand that. So can you build a relationship? Then what do they charge up from versus percentage? So essentially, it's about if you're releasing your first single, for example, and you've never done it before, and you're giving it a go, it's probably worth you going with someone like Ditto or TuneCore. So a service where you pay them some money and they will put your music out for you. Because in that way, you can just test what it's like. You can see what works, whether or not you liked the platform where you thought, because you can't release the same song on through lots of different distributors. You can only release but you can release, say you've done one single, your next single, you can put it on another distributor. That's totally fine. You're not bound to any of them, which means that you can try the best that works for you. So you might like, I don't know, you might like the way that Ditto report, you might like the fact that TuneCore pay you monthly, which they do. So there's pros and cons with all of them, and it's about what is working for you at what point you are within your career. Because if you're kind of shooting for someone like the Orchard won't talk to you, the Orchard just won't talk to you. They will just ignore your email. AWOL may answer your email, but then they'll go, well, what have you done? And if you haven't done very much, then they're probably not going to offer you anything. So you're probably going to start on these kind of paid platform, these paid distributors. And they're really good. And, like I say, you get 100% of everything you earn back, which is brilliant. But in the long term, if you're looking to do kind of release a strategy and you're maybe on your 5th release and you're like, okay, I really need some support from my distributor now. I've gained this amount of audience, but I need to really sort of like leverage this. That's when you probably want to start thinking about talking to the AWOLs of this world. And because you'll be able to prove, listen, I've got an audience, I've got this amount of monthly listeners, I've streamed this amount many times, I've been on these playlists, but with your help, I think you can elevate. And that's when hopefully they come on board and start sort of batting for you, start doing some of that work for you, and that's what happens is as you get further into the music industry, essentially you start by doing everything, and the further you get on, more people do stuff for you. Now they charge for it, and that's where things get a little tricky. But then you can concentrate more on being an artist. So there's pros and cons on that. I hope that is useful. I'll come back to questions at the end of this section if that's all right with everyone, just because I think that kind of works best. So uploading. So really important when you upload your work is to make sure that you have all the correct metadata. So metadata is the stuff that's baked into the file, into the MP3. So when it's downloaded or it's streamed, or when you look at credits, so for example, on Spotify, everything is there. You want your songwriters on there. That's where they learn their, they really want to make, it's nothing more annoying that when you've produced a record and your credit isn't on there. It's like, it's the least you can do. So make sure that you're filling in all those contributors in, because that's a way of you acknowledging their work, and it helps them in a lot of ways. Also makes you look more legit as well. It says, look, I've worked with loads of people and it's really cool, and there's been a team behind me. It's really good. So it's really important to have that metadata. If you're planning future releases, the release as part of an upcoming campaign. Try to upload your release all at once. So what you can do is actually, you can do what, and I don't want to get into too much into the technicalities of this, but essentially you can do what's called waterfall releasing, which is where you release a single and it's out for 4 weeks. And then when the next single gets released, the old single becomes like the B side of that single. So it kind of creates an EP. We call this waterfall releasing. So essentially, if you do a 4 single run, it ends up being like a collection of a 4-track EP. And by doing that, by bundling them together, you tend to find that there's more traction. So more people will that listen to that new single, but then listen to the other songs that are on as part of that record, if that makes sense. I know that Hannah Trigwell, who's brilliant independent artist from Leeds, she did that recently with her last release. So she waterfalled her release and it worked really well. Another artist who did it recently was Everything But the Girl, who released their first album in 25 years, and they waterfalled their single. So the Nothing Left to Lose was their first single that came out. And then Run a Red Light was their second single. I was a big fan, by the way. Came out, and that was and the first single sort of became the B side of that. So it appears as part of a package. So we call that waterfalling. So it's really good if you're releasing an EP. So you're releasing a single that maybe has a lead single, and then you're releasing an EP. You can upload all those at once, and then they can appear and be part of that. So it's about kind of like using the technology to help promote your work. I can answer more questions on that if people are getting confused, because sometimes it can be confusing. I get it. I start talking and I confuse myself sometimes. These are things that can be explained, by the way, by your distributor. If you're not sure what waterfalling is, you want to look more into that, just do some researching on the internet. It's a really good technique if you've got multiple releases coming out. But yeah, I really recommend. An EP, make sure you're putting everything out together. Like you're doing, wanting to release an EP, and you want it to be listened to as a whole. Make sure you're releasing it as a whole and not just as kind of one after another. It depends on, again, how you want people to listen to your music. Are you wanting everyone to listen to it as a suite, or do you want them as individual singles, or do you want them as individual singles that eventually make an EP? Again, that's down to you, and that's kind of being creative with your releasing, right? That allows you to be creative with what you're doing, and most distributors will give you options on how to do this. So once you've uploaded to your DSPs, they have services that allow you to claim your artist profile. Make sure you claim them. So your artist profile is your unique profile. So, for example, I have Phonics is Flawed, which is one of my artist names, or Lost Beaches is another one. And they have the blue tick. You'll see they've all got the little blue tick. You can go on Spotify and look at them. And basically, I've claimed my profile. What you do is you have to verify that it's yours. You do that by linking to social media accounts. And I haven't done it for ages. So this is how I used to do it. I used to do it through Instagram and basically you'd be sent on Twitter and you'd be sent a link. I don't think they probably use Twitter anymore because, it's gone rogue. But essentially, it's about verifying that you are that artist, you own that name, you own that account, and these are the different here on the screen. You can see the different services that allow you to do that. So claim your artist profile, and that allows you then to kind of like populate that in a way that represents you as an artist, and different ways of doing that. YouTube works separately. Your distributor will upload to an artist's channel, but not necessarily connect with your work. There are advantages in uploading your own work to your YouTube channel and connecting the account to your distributor. So essentially, what that means is that you might want to upload it yourself, monetize it, but then also link it to a distributor. You may just want the distributor to do it, and then you link it to your account. There are myriad reasons. YouTube is a law unto itself, and I do not profess to know much about YouTube. I've always found it a desert that I am lost in, if I'm really honest. Like DSPs, I am totally get, and I'm, I get the functionality of it. YouTube has literally its own laws, but but it is worth making sure that you're up there and you're visible. YouTube is still one of them. One of the key places people go to for music discovery. It's still one of the top places. It used to be the place a few years ago where new music was discovered. I think it's waned a little bit in the past few years. TikTok has obviously kind of come and stolen some of its sheen, but it is really, really worth making sure that your music is uploaded. You're also worth mentioning that by being on DSPs, and it allows your music to be used on things like TikTok, on Instagram Reels and things like that. And that's really useful because that functionality allows music to be used and then proliferated. But also, you earn a very, very, very small amount of money from it. And again, the argument is, well, what's the point? It's only a little bit of money. The point, and I think this is really worth mentioning, and I hope as someone who has a portfolio career is evidencing in this, is that it's not just about one big chunk of cash. What you're trying to do is, as a creative, is to generate multiple sources of income. And those small amounts of income hopefully then build up to a decent income, and I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of rantings about that, but now might not be the time. So when you've claimed your artist profile, you can then fill it with populate it. So assets like photos, landscape portraits, put a bio on there, link to your social media accounts, create your own playlists, videos to canvases on Spotify. So when you play a track and you've got the little animation, they're really easy to do. You can AI generate that stuff really simply if you want to. It's what I did for my last single. You can link to Songkick or various other different merch stores depending on the different DSP. DSPs really like you using this stuff. They really like it when you put a single out, that you make an effort and you change. If you're releasing a new single, change your bio, update it, update the track, the artwork. Make sure that you're using those. Keep it fresh. People coming back and seeing that you're active. That's really, really important. It's really important that you seem active. You might go, oh God, it's another thing I've got to update. Yeah, it is. It's what we do, right? This is what we do. It's part of the price of doing business. We want to put out, it's like making the best. You don't have to. No one's going to make you. That's also fine. But it's really worthwhile doing, because what you're trying to do is keep people updated. People might want to read about what you're doing. I don't know how many people read blogs on Spotify. I do, actually. Maybe I'm old school, but I tend to look at credits when I'm listening to a song. I'm always interested about who's behind music, and making sure that information is available. Oh, I really like this. I think it's really good. This artist's really interesting. Make sure that there's an Instagram or whatever social media is your flavor. Make sure people are able to reach you. Make it easy for the listener. That's what I'm trying to say. So pitching to Spotify. This is the thing that everyone gets really excited about. So you can pitch to Spotify to be included on their playlist. Now, this is editorial algorithmic playlists. As I've mentioned, editorial are the things that are put together curated by human beings. Algorithmic are kind of ones that are machine built, built on taste, mood, whatever it might be. And this is also things like radio and kind of the discovery stuff that arrives. And like, for example, one of my I get most of my listenership on Spotify radio for one of my some of my music. That's the biggest listenership I get in a week. I get about I think it's 1,500 listens a week from Spotify radio for my Lost Beaches music. They recommend 4 weeks ahead, so minimum 7 days. So if you've uploaded your music and you've left it till like 3 days to pitch to Spotify, you're not going to get on us. Please do it early. Get your music uploaded early, and then pitch to Spotify early. Now, you can update and you can edit your pitch. So if things happen, like you've got a radio on play, or you've got some significant support from from a radio station or from an influencer or whoever it might be, then you can edit it and include that in your bag. But make sure, but it's recommended 4 weeks ahead. Give yourself the best chance and do that. Okay, so this is a big one for me. Add keywords. So for fans of suitable talk. I'm going to come back to that. So suitable playlist. So where would your music fit? What play? Do some research. Do the work for them. Like this will be really good for this playlist, and this playlist. Talk about any support radio you've had. Describe the track as emotion. So maybe it'll trigger some of the algorithmic stuff. So making sure you're descriptive. Now this is where I come back to and to the four fans of. Learn how to talk about your music. This is sort of a side note, okay? We're sidebarring right now, everyone. Learn how to talk about your music. I get deeply frustrated when I go, oh, so what kind of music do you? Oh, it's really, it's really hard to describe, man. It's like, it's really, it's really original. And I'll play it and I'm like, oh, so it's indie pop then, right? Okay, so you sound like, you sound a bit like the Kaiser Chiefs and some other stuff from the mid-noughties. Great, good. That's what you sound like. Don't do the whole coy like I don't like pigeonholing music. Pigeonhole it, do it. Like, and you don't have to do it all the time. It doesn't mean you have to be pigeonholed for that, but for this purpose, learn how to talk about your music. If you can't talk about your music, if you can't say, oh, so what kind of music do you make? Oh, so I make kind of like right now I'm making down tempo music, so I suppose stuff that's sort of similar to like Burial or a more kind of ambient bonobo. That's sort of the vibe that I am. That Subtract as well sort of sits in that kind of vibe. So that kind of sort of very and I would say it's quite ambient and mellow, but it's still got kind of a slight dance rhythm to it. So if you're into that kind of stuff, I think you're really into it. So what I've described is my Lost Beaches music. There you go. And like, it's not a brilliant description by any means, but I can talk about it. It's really important you're able to sell your music because no one else will. Don't expect someone to go, oh, what he means is this. Oh, they think that their music is this. No one's going to do that. You need to be able to do it. So learn. So people think it's cool if you can't I don't like to categorize my music. Why don't you? It's okay. No one's going to put you in prison for it. Like, it's okay. Like, be comfortable with categorizing your music. It's all right. It's okay to say, oh, well, I love this music when I was making it, so it was inspired by that. Or, I think people who like this artist will like this music. It's okay to link yourself with other people. It helps, and it helps sell your music and reach people. Want people to listen to your music. Give them a hand. So investigate Spotify for Artists. It says here, really important to do that. Like, they've always got like new features all the time. There's some free stuff. There's quite a lot of paid for stuff, which, unless you can get really heavy traction, I'm not sure how much it's worth it. Like, so for example, the new feature, it's like minimum of 80 quid to use, and it's like 13p per, like, I looked at it recently, it was like 13p per click, and I was like, that's like, if I'm getting 0.003p a track a play, I don't know how, like, it would require my song to be released to listen to by that same person a lot per click, if that makes sense. But it's still really worth looking at all the back ends of this stuff. So go and have a look at Apple Music and how they operate, how because they are starting to open up a little more. Apple, they used to be a complete closed shop, but now so please go and have a look, go and have a read at kind of best practices. Don't get into the whole like, you'll get the hundreds of emails. We can get you on every Spotify playlist possible. Like, can they, will they, or will they just take $25 and you'll never hear from them again? So yeah, there are some good things. There are some good, but for editorial and Spotify playlists, don't go down that route. If you want to contact independent Spotify artists, use stuff like somewhere like Submit Hub. who are really good. You know, I've got Time for Submit Hub. You know, they've got a lot of good, and they've got a lot of transparency tools about like how many people listen to the playlist. You know, use those kind of services. They might cost, but they do some free credits, so you can try it out, see if it works for you. Do some research before you start. You know, start sending it off to loads of different playlists on something like Submit Hub. Like, do a deep dive into kind of like which of the playlists are going to work for you. You know, it takes some work, but you can save that information. And, you know, and once you know that, you can then target those people and you can come back to them and go, listen, you supported my last single. Would you like to do it again? And actually, sometimes they do, and you can build relationships that way. So yeah, don't see one single as the entire entity. See it as a start of a journey. Your first single should be the start of a journey. And if you're on your fifth single, then see it as a continuation. You can always learn more. I hope this is useful so far. So I'm going to look at some questions before we move on. Okay, so I'm just gonna. So I'm just looking at everyone's questions. It feels really weird, by the way. I feel like I'm talking to myself a little bit because I can't see anyone. I can't hear from. Is people still there, by the way? Just gives a yes or a thumbs up on. You know, like on, are people still there? Is this okay? Is it enjoyable? I hope you're all right. Having a good time. Or am I talking to myself? Ah, lots of messages coming. Thank you very much. Yes. Good. Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Just needed that weird. But you know, I'm thinking of like, am I just showing in the dark? Okay. For a first-time artist releasing music, do you think? So we've talked about DistroKid, so I've looked at that. Does that include royalties for performance or simply mechanical royalties? So what you're talking about is if a DSP is giving you royalties, that's actually not mechanical royalties. That would be what's called master use royalties. So you're getting money for them your master the recording getting played. That's what you're getting paid for. I'm going to talk about a little bit. There are some performance royalties as well attached to getting streamed on DSPs, but I'll go into that. What is your advice on moving distributors if you want to switch, however, already have music out with another? So you don't necessarily need to. If you want to switch your entire catalog, you can. And you know, I think they're making it easier to do that nowadays. You can just have things out on different distributors. So you can, you know, you have something out on TuneCore, something else on Kicker, something else out on, you know, CD Baby. It's okay as long as it's not the same song. That's a no-no. You're giving. So it's worth mentioning when you release a track with a DSP, you are giving them the license to distribute that one recording, that record. You can't then go, oh well, I'm going to go put it out on another distributor. That one record, you have given them the license. Now you can do a takedown. You can email and go, I no longer want this record to be out, and they will take it down for you. You will be given a code, an ISRC code. So if you've say got 10,000 streams on a track and you don't want to lose those streams because that looks good, if you re-upload a track with another distributor and put the same code on there, it will then it'll say, oh, the DSP will go, oh, it's this recording. This has had this amount of streams already, and it will clock the streams on your profile. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, you can move. It depends on the distributor. Someone's answered the ISRC code. Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. Good bit of support. I used DistroKid for my first single, using a friend who is also a producer's account. And when it came to claiming an artist profile, I only looked at Spotify. If this was back in July, and I hadn't even considered claiming those others until this call. Using those links, is there a time limit you have on claiming them? Is there any chance anybody could have claimed them? Unlikely that people would have tried to claim them. It's pretty unlikely, if I'm really honest. And so the question is essentially, could someone try and claim those, claim your, and are they time limited? No, they're not time limited, to my best knowledge, and probably unlikely someone's tried to claim them. They would probably struggle if they haven't got access to your social media accounts and email to claim them. So they might have tried, but they probably won't be able to, because it's all done via email and other kind of verification processes. So yeah, don't worry too much about that. Excellent. Good. Excellent. Thank you, everyone who's left the lovely messages. Good. So that's we've done a little bit there on that. So we're going to talk about promoting your release. It's the reason why I put it's always been hard. This is my little bugbear. Nothing bores and frustrates me more than an independent artist going onto Instagram and thinking that they've been really original by going, I'm gonna use this platform to blow off the lid about how hard it is to be an independent artist, because it's so difficult and it's a real struggle, and I'm gonna make this part of my narrative. And I'm like, please don't. It's always been hard releasing music. It is always been difficult to reach an audience. The grass has never been greener, by the way. I grew up in the days, when I first started releasing music, we were press it on CD, which was extortionately expensive. You were then having to hand those CDs out to people for nothing. So you're just literally handing cash away every time you send someone a CD to review or promote or try and get it on a radio station. So you're literally just burning cash every time you sent, a parcel. You were having to post it. So you had, postage costs. It was really expensive releasing music, and it was really difficult to find audiences. Incredibly difficult. It's never been easier. It's just there's a lot more noise now, and this comes with this is a little bit back to the kind of like there's 100,000 tracks a day being put on Spotify, for example. The problem is we all wanted democracy. We all wanted the gatekeepers to be removed. They have been, which is great. The problem is now anyone can release any music, which means there's a saturated market. It's a little bit of like cake and eat it thing. It's very difficult. Some people think it should be gatekept. Some people think that this is how it is. If you want a fair and democratic release process, then that's how it is. So, which is why you have radio stations, why you have record labels, why they have playlists. It's a way to get above the noise, and which is why it is worthwhile pursuing these things, because you want to be heard above everything else that's out there. But it's never been easy. And I sort of want to, I want to scratch that myth that somehow we're living in a really bad time for it. It's really difficult and really hard. It is always been a chore. It's always been difficult, and it's actually easier now. And please, as part of you promoting your music, please don't go on and whinge about how hard it is been an independent artist. Tell that to the person who's been looking after someone in a care home with dementia. Tell them how hard your job is. Someone who's been digging holes for a living, literally. NHS staff. People work really hard for a living, and I understand that it's really hard making a living. It can feel incredibly difficult when you're putting music out there and no one is listening to it, and it can feel incredibly frustrating. But try and remember why you're doing it, and try and reconnect, and just a little bit of humility, a little bit of it's going to be tough, but sometimes things, if it's worth the fight, then it's worth doing. It's worth keeping that positivity and keep going. I say that with a full appreciation of my privilege, of the fact that, I'm a white middle-class dude. I get afforded so much stuff that a lot of people haven't. But what I tend to find is that there is there are some people who feel that music should be, their music should be rewarded and they should be given, and also there's some people who understand it's a hustle and it's really hard and you have to work really, really hard. Now, if you don't want to, that's totally cool. If you're like, what, this is not for me, that is absolutely fair. If you want it to be a hobby, brilliant. If you want it to be just part of what you do, great. No problem at all. There is not there isn't any rules about how much you have to have and do it. But yeah, I get really frustrated with the with the people coming on Instagram and earnestly telling me how difficult it is, and how what they're going to do is expose how difficult it is as an independent artist, like it's not been done a million times before. It's not original, and please don't do it. That's my only thing. Sorry if anyone who's watching this who isn't been part of this, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but yeah. So promoting your releases. So encourage a call to action. Essentially, what you're trying to do is the people who are following you and are there, encourage them to do something. Just telling them you're releasing something is fine, but that isn't very active. Active and passive. This is a big thing for me. Like I'm always talking about this as a sort of as if you can get someone to do something, that is incredible. Like people are like, a lot of information gets thrown at people, so if you can get them to do stuff, that's amazing. So for example, pre-saves are available free through Feature FM, Smart URL, Pre-Save IO, and other distributors will make it part of their service, or you can even pay for it if your thing doesn't, or you can. There's ways and means of getting what's called pre-saves. You need a UPC, which is generated when you upload the music via your distributor, and once you've got that code, you can then create a pre-save. These are really important. So the more pre-saves you got, the more it's like people are engaged and listening to your music. It might help, just nudge you into for playlists and things like that. But it's allowing people to be active. What you're also hoping is that if they pre-saved it, that they once they open up on the Friday of your release, they go, oh yeah, pre-save, brilliant, I'll listen to that, and they listen to the music they pre-saved, and that'll obviously add to your counts and add to listenership. Hopefully they love it. And what the thing you want most, I think, out of all this stuff is for them to save it to their own playlist, because if they do that, that's a really important thing. That action cannot be if someone saves my music to their playlist, it means they've actively gone, I love this, I want to make sure I get back to this. And that's brilliant. That is interaction. It's really, really important. Like, do not underestimate the power of people taking time out to listen to your music. Yeah, like that's brilliant. There's, like I said, 100,000 records a day being put on Spotify. If they're listening to your music, if 10 people listen to your music, that's 10 people. Like we get so obsessed with the amount of numbers. Just think about that for a minute. 10 people you've never met before have taken time out to listen to your music. That's pretty brilliant. Like, honestly, I know it sounds like it won't make you a living, won't pay the bills, blah, blah, blah. Monetarily, no, but emotionally, pretty great. And I always try and reconnect with that stuff. Don't forget to include iTunes pre-order downloads, always really good. Getting in iTunes charts is always really fun. It doesn't take a lot, if I'm really honest. But, it's always fun to go, hey, I'm in the iTunes chart. I'm in the top 20. Direct to fan links. So things like Bandcamp, making sure people can link to Bandcamp and get stuff. Mailing list signups, so people can, because mailing lists are incredibly, so for example, I was mentioning that I have a mailing list, so not mailing list, a podcast. We release that on Substack. Every week when we release it, we send a newsletter out saying we put it out. That I think it's something like 60% of our listeners come through that mailing list, and about 70% of people open it, which is pretty amazing. That's a high return on. So mailing lists, I still cannot tell you how important they are. So many artists don't use them. Really worthwhile. Have a look into it. Don't just concentrate on one platform. Your fans will go where they want to. Make sure that they have choices of links. So don't forget to offer iTunes, Bandcamp, as I mentioned. Bandcamp is really important because it allows you to capture useful fan information. So, for example, if they put in their email address, which means you can add it to their mailing list. Add it to your mailing list, and again, the importance of mailing lists. Services like Linktree are really useful because that will basically give if you have a Linktree link on your Instagram bio, they click on that and they can link to all the pre-saves of wherever you want them to do that. So worth looking at kind of those kind of services, making sure basically you're making again easy as possible for a fan to reach your music. So create your own campaign. So incentives really important. So like you maybe a t-shirt giveaway, cassette tapes, test pressing, whatever for whoever pre-saves. Ask them to screenshot like so the first 10 people who pre-save it get a t-shirt or get a something. I ask them to verify it on socials, and that amplifies your campaign. It kind of gives people incentive to do it. Like it, it's really hard because it's really, so it's really worth, I think, looking at how other people do it as well. Like sometimes it's worth looking outside. I really recommend looking at Silvers, who are a deli, and I think their social media is brilliant. And that entire business has been built around kind of like active social media and how they interact with their audience. And I think we can learn more from doing that rather than always looking at their arts. It's worth looking at how other small independent businesses actively, Get Baked's brilliant at it as well. So these sort of like outlets that are local, really small, and they're appealing to a really small amount of people, very local. How can you use stuff that they do to make? How can you use their narrative, their language, or the way they use social media? So just worth looking at. You can use services such as Presave.io, does everything for you, nice and neat, runs a pre-save competition, draws winners, all that stuff. So actually there's some functionality with Presave.io, so worth looking at. Definitely, if you're wanting to run something like that, so it means you're not having to kind of like sweat it too much, and it's always worth having a bit of functionality built in. As I mentioned, mailing lists. So MailChimp is free to use. You can tag audiences by location and other criteria. Create fan communities, so are there fan communities in terms of the genre of music? Again, like you recognizing what kind of music you're dead into, right? Music you make, because there may be a whole bunch of people that are really into the kind of music you make. And if you're able to name it and go, oh, I'm that kind of music, and you can tap into the fan communities. That might be Facebook groups, WhatsApp broadcast groups, Discord channels, Instagram channels, posters, flyers, all the old school stuff as well. A bit of tangible stuff is always good. Bit of QR coding. People are, just make it dead easy. And I'm like one of the big things. So one of the things I did when I was managing a band, I got the band when they released a new single. They were playing The Brood, and I got the band to get everyone to take their phones out and save the single. Like it was the day of the release, to save the single on whatever listening platform they were listening to, whatever DSP they were on. So suddenly we got a whole bunch of saves, like 450 people saved that track. It was so things like that. It's like making sure you're active, engaging, making it easy for audiences to reach and engage your music. QR codes are just absolutely where if you release any print, any kind of posters, make sure that your QR code is on there. So we're going to look at more about this in Marketing Week next week. But, so just some ideas from posts, it's been after post release. So it's been 1 year. ICYMI. Someone told me what that meant. I can't remember. I put it down. I'm like, I can't remember it now. So anyone knows, you can put it in the things. And there you go. Lyric books, stories tell people what the song's about. What is the artwork for? If you've got any Spotify playlists, share any press and radio coverage, behind the scenes videos. People love that shit. A photo of a photo shoot. People love that. I don't know why, but people do. People love to see it. Ask me anything. Guest takeovers. Just stuff that's kind of like these things really are quite easy and simple to do. They're quite bite-sizey. Don't make it hard on yourself. But scheduling is really important, and making sure you're creating the time to do it. Again, we're going to look at that next week more. So I don't want to talk about too much. So very quickly, I mentioned about the importance of being signed up to PRS and MCPS. So when your song is streamed, if you've written the song, so as I said, there's 2 copyrights. There's master copyright, the recording, and then there's a compositional copyright, which is the song itself, whoever wrote the song. Remember, there can be one song, but there can be 1,000 recordings of that one song. So, for example, there is Friday I'm in Love by The Cure, but then there's also Phoebe Bridges' version. That song was written by Robert Smith of The Cure, but he earns money as the songwriter from Phoebe Bridges' version, because as a songwriter, that's because he wrote the song, and that is for every song. So anyone covers your song, you should earn some royalties for it. But even if it's your version of the song, you will earn royalties from it. So if you put it out on a DSP, in this country, 18% of the royalty is paid directly to MCPS and PRS, and then that is paid. If you're a member of both of those organizations, you get paid that 18%, and that's on every single play. So you can end up, if you do all right and you've got a lot of catalog out there and, it's doing okay, you can usually end up with an all right amount of money every quarter. Again, this is about building catalog, building the amount, so when artists, there's quite a big trend at the moment. Well, it's not a trend. It's not a trend. It's quite a thing which I've seen in artists do, which essentially they've got music, it's done really well, but then they've decided to change tack a little bit and they remove their songs from DSPs because it doesn't reflect me as an artist. Firstly, no one cares that much. An artist can change and grow. That's okay. Show your journey. Also, have that stuff on there so people can listen to more stuff. Even if it's like, I'm not totally into that anymore, it's okay, because people still might be. And they might also get into it anyway. And they're going to listen to that stuff and listen to that collection of stuff. And that can build your listenership and build your royalties that come back to you. And that earns you more money. And by earning more money, you get to, you get to keep doing this, which is the kind of name of the game, really. So make sure that, so radio plays are also played out through PRS and MCPS. Again, I will talk about this more in the kind of managing your rights thing. It's a whole minefield. It's sort of one of my specialist areas. In fact, it is one of my specialist areas. I get really into it. But it's really important, going back to making sure that all your stuff is registered with the right, what we call PROs, performing rights organizations, so you can get paid. Ultimately, and because if it's a bigger station, or it's it's a bigger venue, or wherever it might be, or it's on any DSP, you are earning money every time it's played, and you should be collecting all of those royalties, not just some of them. So we've got about a quarter of an hour left. Have we got any questions? I have, yes. Good. I've got some to go through here. So any best ways about splitting credits and royalties between everyone involved in the project? Yeah, have that conversation for start early. So if you're going to go right in a room, or but if you've done a project, it's about being adult about it and going, how are we doing this? Now, hopefully what you want, if there is someone who's been a lead artist and they've done the majority of the work, then you have to acknowledge that and give them the right. If it's been essentially a bit of a joint effort, then just go with it. I tend to go with a kind of like, whoever's in the room gets an equal cut, because ultimately it all ends up, working out. It's important to have what's called a songwriting split document. So this can be like a PDF, or you can use the kind of those DocuSign, things like that, if you really want to get flash. But essentially, it's a copy of a songwriting agreement which says who's involved with the right, who involved with the writers. If they've got CAE numbers, which are kind of PRS numbers, put those down, put their addresses down, get everyone to sign it, agreed on a percentage, whether that not be the songwriting or even the master as well. Really important as well, like who owns what, making sure that's really clear. But the best way to is it been written down. So having a document that's written down. I hope that helps. I always offer my music for pre-order on iTunes and Bandcamp, but it's been quite hard to direct people to iTunes because of all the iTunes links are now redirect to Apple by default. Yeah, it's an unfortunate one. Because Apple they essentially want to kill iTunes, but they can't because loads of people still use it. They were going to shut it down in 2021. That was the plan, but obviously COVID happened and lots of people bought music, including kind of like boomers with iPods. So they realized it was not a great idea, and people still want to buy buy downloads. I still buy them for stuff like if I'm using it for like pre-show music or using it in a podcast or whatever. I'll buy the music and on iTunes and stuff. So yeah, there is still an audience who'll buy music, but yeah, it's a really annoying. It is annoying. Which I don't really know. It's probably worth talking to your distributor whether or not they've got any kind of stuff, any protocols or anything that can help with that. Does anyone else have any questions? Or are you all burnt out? If anyone wants to kind of turn the camera on and give me a wave before we end, that would be really nice, just because I've not seen anybody and that's felt very weird. I'm going to stop sharing. I think, sorry, I will go. Just to remind you all that next week is promotion and marketing with Jazz Sidhu. Jazz is kind of, that's her area, their area, and hopefully they will answer some of that more, kind of get more in depth in some of the stuff that I kind of glanced over. But I hope that kind of gives you an idea of the kind of process and about the importance of process and the importance of planning and making sure that you have a kind of structured idea of release and understanding the different facets that are involved within the release process. Thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions, I'll stick around for a little bit, and you can ask if you want to come on camera or you want to, you can do too. But it's been thank you people who sort of waving, sharing. I hope you've enjoyed it, and it's been really lovely. Thank you. I'm waving at you all now. I really appreciate that. Yeah, have a lovely evening, everybody.